Welcome to Reds Access, your weekly Cincinnati Reds podcast throughout the entire 2025 season, covering Reds news, games, and more. Follow us across most platforms at Reds Access, Instagram, Reds_Access, and TikTok at Reds Access Official. We are your hosts, Collin and Kyler Osterberger, lifelong Reds fans who love to talk ball. Kyler, how was your week?
It's good. I'm feeling better. I was sick last week, so back in the game, feeling 100%. How you been doing the past week?
It's been good. I've been doing a few Tops released their 2025 Series 1. So I've been in the card shop, searching for boxes, pulling some boxes, getting some content ready for you guys. That'll be coming. I've been playing around with the angles over here for openings. So first couple ones, they're a little funky on the angle, but I think I got it down now where I can set it up right here and you just see the hands. So you missed my mug. I'm excited. But guys, heading towards 25 subscribers on the YouTube channel. A bunch of growth in the last 4 days. Nearly 200 views on last week's podcast on YouTube and 500 on Facebook. Again, just want to say thank you so much for support. We're looking towards expanding everything here as we kick off towards season. I'll be posting some card openings with some great polls this week as well. And then we're looking towards opening day, and we have some special content planned for opening day as we get near to that. So as we're kicking gear for in-season scheduling, guys, look forward to a ramp up in our productions. And we're excited to jump into it. Speaking of jumping into it, our first kind of segment today, we want to talk about there's a different feeling in Goodyear this year. And Kyler, that's something that's been talked about in the media since pitchers started showing up. There's a different feeling in Goodyear, different kind of feeling in the air. I think Chris Welsh talked on it. We touched on it last week, I think. I just want to discuss, apparently Tito Francona had a little speech, and Greg Kuffner did an article in Sports Illustrated. Charlie Goldsmith talked about it this week, and Charlie Clifford interviewed Terry Francona, who said this about the Reds offseason additions. He says Taylor Rogers is a second lefty who pitches at the end of games. Austin Hayes has something to prove, and Terry is all for it. Terry says that he is here to win. He says, I care so much about this team. This speech, he's talking about additions, how he wants to do it right. He says he already effing loves them. Kyler, what do you think about what Tito brings to this team? What do you think about what this team was missing without him? And what do you think the expectation is with Terry Francona this year?
Yeah. So I saw the speech as well. I saw a little article on it. It seems like it fired up the guys. I think we're all excited for Tito to be the manager of the Reds, get to experience the way he plans his rotations, his lineups. He's great manager when it comes to one-run games, which we struggled with last season. I know we've kind of talked about that over the weeks. But here's my big thing. So 2023, we missed the postseason by one game, right? And then we're going into 2024. We're excited. We pretty much have the same group of young guys going into that. Indio's captain. So like everyone on the team just thought we're going to make the postseason. Like we missed it by one game. We're going to make it this year. No question about it. And that's far from the truth. Obviously we didn't make the postseason last year, but we really struggled in the one-run games. We also made a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, a lot of strikeouts. We just played very sluggish last year. It seemed like we would get hot and then we would be cold, and then we would be cold and then we'd be hot. And it just, you can't play baseball like that. If you start off behind, it's very hard to dig yourself out of that hole. So I think with Tito being the manager, I think he's going to make some changes, obviously. I think he's going to tackle these issues that we struggled with last season. I know we were kind of talking about Ellie De La Cruz. I know he this season is kind of looking at a new batting stance and just trying to work on his approach. That way he's not going to hopefully deal with all the strikeouts and all that issues. But I saw another article really quick before I kick it over to you that I can't remember the reporter, but said something along the lines of with Tito being hired for the Reds, it basically added 10 wins onto our season right there. Just him becoming our manager, which is huge. It's crucial. So I just like, it's great Tito did the speech. I don't think anyone can imagine Bell doing something like that. It seemed like Bell was very passive, kind of just let us melt down and would leave. So, yeah, I'm excited that Tito's bringing that passion, that fire under this young group of guys.
Yeah, totally. You know, I love the hire. I think he's got the fire burning under him. I think he's excited to be back in the sport of baseball, Kyler. I think he's talked about that multiple times. But the most major thing about me, to the speech and what's kind of been going around lately, is let's hear what Jonathan India talked about. We talked about there being a different fire in Goodyear this year and all the hype that Tito's saying about the team and the hirings and free agency. But one thing that Jonathan India came out and said was that there was an issue on the team in discipline last year, and I took advantage of David Bell. I believe he said specifically took advantage of David Bell being a player's manager, these young players.
Yeah.
You can't help but wonder who those players are, if it's Ellie De La Cruz or Noelvi Marte or Benson or who could it be. But I think Tito is going to be the leader a lot of these kids need. If there was a discipline problem, I just want to say really quick, I think a big part of that's on Jonathan India. This is a guy that's supposed to be a captain, a leader on the team. He should be stepping up and saying those things should not happen.
I
but
agree.
Getting on from last year and getting away from Jonathan India, who I saw first picture in the Royals uniform today, I think Tito's going to be what these kids need, and hopefully the issues we had last year aren't replicated. And Kyler, I think a lot of the players kind of agree there are things that need to change. And I think they also agree the speech was pretty cool. So I had a couple excerpts here from different comments from players we'll read out. And, Hunter Green says a great speech, and we just got to do it now. He says the president's great. He commands the room, talking about Terry Francona. His track record precedes him, and we trust him. Santiago Espinal says something similar, Kyler. He says that he's a legend. He can't explain it any better than that. Says he explained it straightforward. Tito Francona said, here's what we have to do. We just have to play baseball the right way. And Jay Mercado echoes the same thing. Says, what can I say? He's done it. He's came back. He's going to do it again. And he knows how to do it. We follow him, whatever he wants. We got to do it. We got to know how to make it right. What are your thoughts on the players are saying? They're all kind of echoing a similar sentiment this year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think that we needed Tito. I've been very pushing on that aspect that I just don't think Bell was the guy. Very passive. Look at the bullpen. He would throw people up there and they'd struggle in late innings. He didn't pull them. So wasn't giving speeches. He wasn't lighting that fire. I agree with your earlier point with India. I don't think the sole responsibility is on him. But as a team captain, you're looked at just like a manager, a coach of a team. You are the captain. They look at you for advice, to get you going when you're just it's not going your way. Your captain's supposed to be there to pick you up. So I think Tito really has affected these players, especially the young ones that are developing. He knows the right things to say. He knows the right things to do. I think the talk around everywhere is that the Reds are a legit postseason team this year because of Tito.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, speaking about there being a talk about us being a postseason team and that being the hype around the league, Charlie Goldsmith wrote an article about the Reds trying to avoid that same optimism trap that they fell into in 2024. And just to quickly summarize the article, and we'll get into some of the players' interviews that he had in the article, basically saying the Reds were one game out of the playoffs in 23, and going into 24, they just thought they had to do the same thing. It was going to work out. Kind of what you talked about earlier. And he talks about how the players fell into that lackadaisical mindset of, oh, we're so good, we're going to make it. And there was no fire to want to make it, Kyler. It was just they thought we were going to. And there was no fire to keep that going. TJ Friedel said that, after missing the playoffs, it was all optimism in the clubhouse and everyone was pumped up, barely missed the playoffs, thought, surely, let's do the same thing, we'll make the playoffs again. Spencer Steer says the same similar sentiment. He says, we just want to go out and do it. We've talked about it. We've talked about making the playoffs. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. He says, we failed. We didn't live to expectations. The feeling is we know who we are. We know we have a good team, and we understand what went wrong last season, and we'll put our heads down and be better and do what people expect.
I like that. Just if I could cut in here, I love that. I love that Steer is out there saying, like, we were wrong, and this year we're going to put our heads down and we're going to work harder. Like, he's taking accountability. I love that he is being outspoken about that. You can't there's too many factors in baseball. You can't just try to replicate what you did the season before just because you have the same guys. Like it doesn't work that way. So I'm glad that they're taking accountability, and they realize they can't just do what they did the season before because that found success or some success. It doesn't mean it's going to work out this year.
Yeah, and think to all the one-run losses we had that you touched on earlier, and we touched on, I think, both episodes so far. Think about those losses and how those impacted the team. You look at the one-run losses, that's playoffs right there. And the reason why you lose a game by one run is because you're lackadaisical. You don't focus. You don't have a drive. You don't have a passion. You don't want to play to the last out. That's how you lose games by a run. That's how you lose games in extra innings. That's how you lose games in walk-off fashion. That's not how you win ball games. And you hope that, Tito Francona can bring some of that fire back. I think Jake Fraley summed it up well. He said, if you're constantly focusing on expectations, that every time you feel the ground shake, you're going to look up and you're going to see a giant bomb falling towards you. And he says, it'll be like, wow, how the hell are we going to get out of here in time, right? And so if you're focusing on the expectation, looking at the ground, and you're not looking in front of you at your surroundings in the moment, you never have time to react to what happens. So you say you got to be looking all the time around you. You got to be looking in the moment. You got to be active. You can't just think you're getting somewhere, watch the ground on the path and get there, which I think is an important part.
No, I agree. And just looking at the one-run losses for the 2024 season, we were 15-28. Like that's a lot of losses by one run that, like you said, just if we could have flipped that. 23, we did a lot better. Top of mind, I don't know what our record was in one-run games. I didn't have the stat pulled up. But just same thing going back to the group this last season went in thinking they could do the same thing, and their one-run wins and losses basically flip sides, and it cost us.
So if you flip those one runs, you said we were what, 17 and what?
We were 15-28 in one-run games last season.
At 13 wins, we go 90 wins, 91 wins. If that's the case, then if we flip that, if we played fundamental baseball and flip that, and that's not realistic to be to flip that many wins on the other side. But say you do, we're a playoff team easily. One of the big reasons I think we didn't make the playoffs was that lack of discipline, right? And Tito Francona summed it up. He said that he had heard early when he got signed on and when he was excited for getting on with the Reds. So he heard early we had a bunch of good kids. He said, but now we've actually signed some vets. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I went back and looked at our offseason transactions and our episode last week, and we signed Austin Hayes and Wade Miley. I know we got Gavin Lux, but he's only been in the league 3 years. So who steps up as team captain? I'm sorry.
Brady Singer.
Yeah.
He's got a couple years on
Singer's 3 years in the league, or 4 years maybe. It's not like he's a long-term vet. So my question to you is, India's gone. Who steps up as team captain? India came out. He said they need a fire lit underneath him. He didn't do his job as a team captain, plain and simple. India did not do his job. He was the 4-year vet. It was his job to be professional, to bring the team under his wing. When Votto left, it was India's job, and India did not do it. So who takes the reins this year? Is it Jamer Candelario, Jake Fraley, Tyler Stevenson, or do we have another year of sloppy baseball in store?
I don't think we have another year of sloppy baseball, but I don't know. I think it's kind of just a shootout. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I would even put Lux up there in that list. I know it's his first year in Cincinnati. He's had great years. Ellie De La Cruz, I know he's young. He's got a lot of passion behind him. He wants to be the best baseball player in the MLB.
Yep.
I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'm kind of just shooting a blank here because, it could be anyone. Anyone could emerge and kind of just lead that team.
I'll tell you, I don't think we have one. Is my bigger,
it's true.
My bigger concern is I don't think we have one.
I think someone's going to step up to the plate and emerge as a captain. That's why I think it can be any of these guys. There's not really one that stands out to me. But yeah, I agree with you.
I'll tell you, there's two guys on top of my head when I think of a captain, a real captain guy, like kind of personality. I think of Spencer Steer, and I think of Matt McClain. And when we look back at 2023 or 2024, it wasn't just the one-run games. We lost Matt McClain for the whole season. We tried to replace Matt McClain with Ty France, with Santiago Espinal, who ended up being a really solid player at the end of the year, but the beginning of the year was terrible. We had to take guys out of the outfield and in the infield like Steer, and that led us to bring guys up like Blake Dunn. Nick Martini got solid at-bats in the outfield. There were guys, Levi Jordan, there were guys that had no business being on a Major League Baseball field last year that were there because
we were just plugging holes.
Yep.
Yeah, we were plugging holes at that point. I think Bell struggled with that as well, putting a lineup and a rotation and everything together. So
that's not all on him. I mean, the team had holes. Friedel was out for the most of the year as well, and when he came back, he wasn't the same player. There were a lot of issues. Jake Fraley was not 100% to start the year or even the whole year. There were issues, but one guy there was an issue with last year was Elly De La Cruz, right? Elly De La Cruz put up big-time stats last year. He's probably a prime candidate for a 30-30 player this year. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that he might go 40-40 this year. I think he's got the tools to do it. Elly does too. Recent interview, Elly De La Cruz says that he thinks he can win the MVP if he's healthy. What do you think there?
Yeah, so first off, let me quote the MLB. They made a post on Facebook and their social medias probably about an hour or two ago. This is the projected 2025 stats for Elly De La Cruz. So they think he's going to have 54 stolen bases, which would lead the MLB, 25 home runs, 85 RBIs, 101 runs, which would be tied ninth in the MLB off projections, and then a 797 OPS. So great stats, obviously. But with him winning MVP, I feel like it might be just a little bit of a stretch. He's still young. He's still developing. I know he struggled with striking out last season. We're going in with a new batting stance, kind of playing around with that. Most likely in spring training, we'll probably see some differences in his batting. But I know I saw an interview. Tito believes that he can be the best player in MLB. There's talks about he could be the first player to break the $1 billion contract mark. I know they interviewed him about that, and I loved his response. He basically said, I don't care about that. I just want to play ball. So he's head's right. I just hope he can kind of correct his batting issues with the strikeouts, all that kind of stuff. But I think if he stays healthy, he can minimize his errors. I saw another article about he has the fastest ball thrown infield. It was like 106 miles per hour, but it was an error. So just working on those errors, his batting, I think he could be up there. I think he could be in the discussion. I just don't know if this season's his time yet. I think he might need a little bit more development, but I obviously would love for him to win MVP.
I don't want to focus on the projections because I think we definitely want to save that for a big Elly reveal with the infield projection. But I will say this: that projection has him having a significantly worse year than he had last year. He had 25 home runs last year in 160 games, just like that. But his OPS was 809. He is only going into his age 23 season. He's only going to get better. I think it's insane to figure that he gets worse. John Anderson on Twitter or X made a post recently saying he was given an idea to develop a stat that looks for true strikeouts. This means a strikeout call where if you get rid of the bad strike calls made, they still strike out, meaning when umpires miss calls. Elly De La Cruz led the league, and he's calling screwed Ks. He had 42 of them. Elly De La Cruz had a 31.3 K percentage last year. If you take away the 42, it's a 25.3% K rate, which would be a very good K rate. He got screwed a lot of the time. There were a lot of bad calls because he's 6'6" or however tall he is. I think he's 6'5". Yeah, he gets screwed a lot, and so hopefully he can learn to he can develop that. He can develop the idea in the league that he has a good eye and benefit from that. I think Elly can do anything he puts his mind to, including win the MVP. But he's got to clean up parts of his game, like you said. One of the big thing we want to talk about today, guys. Obviously, we want to talk about the hype for spring training, but our main segment today, as we get into about 20 minutes of the show length here, we wanted to talk about the Reds rotation. So, first spring training episode, we're going to go position by position in spring training, or rather, position group. And this is the first week. It's going to be the Reds rotation. So this is a rotation that's got a lot of depth this year. It's got a lot of talent. Kyler, I want to do this as like an estimated rotation. So I want to discuss each guy, the planned rotation, assuming there's 5 guys. So I personally, I like the 6-man rotation, but I don't think it's going to happen. So if we've got 6 major league starters here, and I'm talking about Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer, Nick Martinez, Andrew Abbott, and Rhett Lauder, and we can only pick 5. My question for you is, who's the odd one out? And we're going to do this one guy at a time. So let's talk Hunter Green. What do we think about Hunter Green this year?
It's our guy. He's our ace. I know he got hurt late last year in August. People talk about how that kind of contributed us to missing the postseason. I know there's a lot more factors to it, but with him being out, obviously our ace, it doesn't help. I think if he can stay healthy, I think he'll solidify his dominance this season. He's obviously my number 1 in my rotation. I'm not going to spoil the rest, but I think it's kind of an obvious answer for the first one. And here's like a little stat I pulled up today. So Hunter Green last year led the National League in WAR. And then also just he would have been a top 5, even top 3 Cy Young Award vote getter if he could have remained healthy. So I thought that was a cool stat, just kind of show you how good of a pitcher he is and how valuable he is to the Reds team.
Yeah, so let's kind of dive in a second. So Hunter Green went 9-5 last year. His B WAR was 6 1/3. 26 games started through 146 innings, struck out 172 to a 2.75 ERA. I need more. From him. I'm sorry. He threw 150 innings rather, but struck out 106
career high
protections. Yeah. We need more innings out of him. We need more strikeouts. I want no less than 175 innings from Hunter Green this year. I would like 200 Ks out of him. But I agree, Hunter Green is our ace. He came into his own. I was one of the Hunter Green detractors up until last year. I know he throws hard, but he can't. He doesn't have this, doesn't have that. He really came into his own last year. Hunter Green's our ace, and I think he's going to have a really tremendous season and solidify his role. I think make the Reds front office look really good for locking him down for that contract they signed him to last year.
Yeah.
Second, and I have these guys kind of listed in my rotation, but so I'm sorry about that on your end. But second, I want to talk.
We can kind of do a recap of it at the end. We'll just say our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, so not a big deal.
Nick Lodolo, lengthy, linky lefty, 6'6" listed. What do you think about Nick Lodolo? I'll tell you my thoughts. I have Lodolo at 2. Lodolo is injury prone because of his fingers, the blisters, right? But when he's healthy, he's a great pitcher. His FIP, which is fielding independent pitching, was 3.95, which tells me he was unlucky last year. I say that because his ERA last year was 4.76. Strikeout numbers were way down last year. So we're talking his rookie year, or rather his last full season. His strikeouts were 11 per 9. They went down to 9 per 9 last year. And then lastly, he's a loopy lefty. He's a strong breaking ball. Everybody knows Nick Lodolo, strong fastball, strong breaking ball, big old left-handed curve. I think he has a bounce back year this year if he stays healthy. I think he's my second guy in the rotation.
So we're a little different on this one in our views. So I actually have him as my 4th spot, or my 4th in the rotation. I also added about the issues with the blisters on his fingers, just trying to stay healthy. So obviously I want him to stay healthy. We'll see what happens, but he's 4th on my rotation. You'll see who I'm going to fill in on my 2nd and 3rd and why.
Somebody told me, or I think I saw on Twitter maybe, that he has like a thing he's wearing on his arm to try to like limit blisters, which I'm not sure how that works with your finger, but it reminds me like those copper, like the copper bands, like the copper gym, like the
maybe like blood flow or something. Maybe there's some science behind it, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. But I think the biggest offseason addition before Gavin Lux came into the picture was Brady Singer. And Kyler, Brady Singer's got a lot of expectations this year as an innings eater. But where do you see him in the rotation? What day is he taking the ball to eat all those innings?
Yeah, so I actually have Singer in my 2nd spot, or my 2nd rotation. I do think he's a great addition to our rotation and our team this year. I agreed with you. I even said he's an inning eater. I think that he can get thrown in there and pitch 7 to 8 innings. And I have him in my 2nd rotation. I think he's strong behind Hunter Green. I'm not sure what spot you have him in, but I think he is a very solid addition to our rotation this year.
I got him in the 3 spot, Kyler. So if you look at all of our pitchers last year, he would lead our staff in innings, 175. Terry Francona came out and said that he wants a guy to go 200 innings. He wants a guy to go in the 6th and 7th innings. That's the kind of pitcher he wants. He says if you make it to the 6th or 7th inning, the odds are you're winning that ball game. So with that in mind, I think he's going to like Brady Singer. Brady Singer's a guy that has a high ground ball rate. We talked about Brady Singer last week in our episode. I think his ground ball rate's going to play. His home run rate probably goes up, but it's only 1 per 9 right now, so I just don't think it's a huge issue. I have him at the 3rd spot. I think he's going to be a solid pitcher this year. I told you last week, I think his ERA definitely goes up, but I bet he has a strong season, solidifies that 3 role, and I think it makes the Reds look pretty good for what their return and value is going to be for Jonathan India.
Yeah, I think the biggest part, and we kind of covered it in last episode, is Great American Ballpark is a hitter-friendly stadium. So just kind of see how he handles that, how he can keep his ERA down throughout the year. That's obviously a very big part.
I think the biggest difference we're going to have here's on this next guy. It's Nick Martinez. Pitched 140 real quality innings for the Reds last year. I think it was to the tune of a 3.10 ERA. Nick Martinez is a real strong pitcher. Definitely worth the contract he got after some early struggles. Of course, the Reds brought him in. I believe they're paying him $15 million this year in a qualifying offer, which is a lot of money for the Reds. Where do you think, if at all, Nick Martinez falls into the rotation?
Yeah, so we're, I think, a little bit different on our thoughts on this. I have him in my 3rd spot for rotation. He is coming off the Reds pitcher of the year last year. So I think that kind of just solidifies him in the rotation at minimum. I think my 3rd, 4th, and 5th guy can kind of be moved around, and it still works. So in my opinion, right now, I have him on the 3rd spot. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that contribute to that. We'll just have to see. But like I said, I think he could be 3rd, 4th, or 5th in my list. I just have him 3rd as of right now.
So I think Nick Martinez threw a lot of quality innings. Like I said, he threw 142 last year of good baseball. But I think his benefit and his strength is in his versatility, right? And we need a guy to come into those games where we blow up and eat innings. And you don't want that to be a guy that puts you out of the game if you get back into it. With this Reds offense, I think we're always capable to get back into a game. Because of that, I have Nick as my swing man. I know Derek Johnson doesn't like 6-man rotations. I'm sure Tito Francona won't either. I imagine that Nick Martinez misses the rotation solely because of the role he self-describes as. I think he's probably the 3rd best pitcher we have on staff, but I don't think he makes the rotation just because of his role. So that's my biggest difference. And you guys will see here shortly who I think replaces him coming out of spring training. But rounding out our, I think everybody would agree, locks for or rather players that assumed are in the rotation for the most part, is Andrew Abbott. I love Andrew Abbott. I think he's a 5th starter. I think Andrew Abbott is a crafty, sneaky left-handed pitcher, which is my way and a lot of the media's way of telling you I don't think he has great stuff. He's got a big curveball. He's got a fastball. It's like 93, and he blows it by people, which doesn't play long-term. He had a good year last year statistically, but it was rough. It was a lot of luck. Andrew Abbott had a lot of luck, and at the end of the year, gets real tired real quick. He says he wants to throw 200 innings this year, and he came into camp 20 pounds down. He needs to get his FIP under 5. He needs to bring his strikeouts per 9 back to 11 to 12 instead of where it is now, which was low. I don't think he has the best stuff, but I hope he takes a leap in year 3. I like him as a player. I like watching him get out there. He's a bulldog. He fights. He attacks. I really like Andrew Abbott, and I think he makes the starter, squeaks in as the 5th starter here in the rotation. Or 4th.
Yeah, so
4th.
You have him 4th. So yeah. I have him. I think mine are kind of jumping around here, but I have Abbott as my 5th as well. Or I have 5th. You have 4th. I agree with you. I think Abbott is very crafty. I think he's a smart pitcher. I also agree with you that he doesn't really have anything in his pitch arsenal that's crazy or exciting in a sense. But like you said, he makes up with that by being crafty. I think he is a very smart pitcher. He's young. He's got a lot of time to develop, and we'll just see what happens. But I have him as my fifth in my rotation.
The other guy that was in the mix here of the six that we said are vying for a roster spot in the starting rotation was Rhett Lauder. Rhett Lauder came up for a cup of coffee last year, had an extremely strong cup of coffee, something you'd see at a local craft coffee shop maybe. He came up through 6 games of, through 6 games of 30-inning baseball, only 22 strikeouts, ERA at 1.17, only gave 4 runs, but he did walk 14 in 30 innings. Rhett Lauder, I think he's a strong player here. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, so I struggled looking at the 6 guys, and I'm going to say this here and be very transparent. I think Lauder can be in the starting rotation. I almost have him battling in that 5th spot. I think it's really going to come down to spring training and how he plays, how he looks. In my opinion, I think he's going to start in AAA at the beginning of the season unless he just balls out in spring training. I think he's going to start in AAA. I think he's going to come up before the All-Star break and most likely be in the rotation. I think that either Abbott might have issues like we were kind of talking about, Nick Martinez, if he struggles. There's a lot of factors I feel like in our rotation that in the best way possible. I don't think our rotation is solidified besides Hunter Green. I think any guy 2 through 5 can move, and I think Lauder can replace them. So I'm pretty comfortable with Singer. I would say Green and Singer I'm comfortable with in the starting, but I think the other 3 guys could be replaced by Lauder.
I don't even know if it's a replace thing. I think it's a if they stay healthy thing.
Yeah.
I think Lauder's like you're trying to say like first guy off the bench sort of deal to take that spot. And I agree for a lot of reasons. I think he cracks the rotation. I would like to see him crack the rotation, I guess. Maybe it's I got a few of his rookie cards on the shelf, but
I would like to see him crack it as well. Trust me. I just don't know if he's going to start the season there. I think he's going to get there at some point this year.
I will say at Reds posts about Rhett Lauder an awful lot for him to go start the year in AAA. Which is my only thought. He walked over 4 an inning, which needs to go down for a starting pitcher. But we'll see with Rhett Lauder. I think he takes the 5th spot in the rotation in my view. But there are a couple guys on the brink who won't start the year in the majors, but who could possibly fight for it. First guy is Chase Burns, Reds' first-round draft pick last year. Number 27 prospect in the league, supposedly an MLB-ready pitcher. Fastball plays peripherally a lot like Paul Skeens' fastball. But he lacks that. And while he lacks that 80 grade splinker that makes Paul Skeens so deadly, I do think has a big future in the MLB. I also think maybe he does see the league this year, Kyler, but I definitely don't think he's cracking any rotation. And imagine he starts the year and probably double it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am very excited to see his debut when that day comes. He's going to have a bright future. I'm excited to watch him develop. But like you said, I just don't think he is going to make it to the show this year. There is a possibility. I can't say yes. You know what I mean? So kind of stay tuned, see how it plays out.
Lastly was Chase Petty, big name coming out of the draft. One of the returns, I believe, for the Tyler Mahle trade that brought Spencer Steer to Cincinnati. Chase Petty ranked number 98 in Major League Baseball pre-2025 rankings for Baseball America's prospects. Kind of a rough year last year after a really strong 2023 where he pitched to a 1.72 ERA. His first full year in the minors, fully healthy for Chase Petty, 4.2 ERA, 137 innings, 130 strikeouts, but he walked nearly 60 for a over 4 per 9 walk rate. Kyler, what's your thoughts about Chase Petty and what's he look like this year?
Yeah, another one that they might see the show. I don't know if they will. I think Petty struggled in the minors last year, like you stated in the stats. I think he needs some more time in the minors to develop, kind of craft his game. I think he may start in AAA, or starting in AAA. He is ready to compete. I think he's going to be fun to watch, but I think he's got some stuff he needs to work on and develop in his own game before he's ready for the MLB.
I imagine AAA as well. Usually MLB ready pitchers will go in AA, not AAA. They want them to dominate, be confident. But I think AAA, just because of how close it is, and they can pull him up from Louisville if need be. He had disappointing 24, but he is fun to watch. I agree. Definitely don't think there's a spot in the rotation for him right now. To be honest, Kyler, I'm not sure he's with the organization post All-Star break. I imagine if we are competitive and competing and we're looking for that last piece, Petty might be
Great
first off.
value.
Yeah, might be first off the bench there to that trade bait to get us a decent return. But that's our kind of thoughts on the Reds rotation in 2025. My rotation is Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer, Nick Martinez. That is wrong. I'm sorry. It's Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer, Rhett Lauder. Rounding it out. Man, I'm all over the place. Is Andrew Abbott and Rhett Lauder? Jeez, old Pete. Green, Lodolo, Singer, Abbott, Lauder. Kyler, where do you fall in?
My rotation's looking like Green, Singer, Martinez, Lodolo, and Abbott. But like I stated earlier, I think Lauder can replace Abbott in that fifth spot. We'll just have to see how spring training goes.
Maybe that was a little bit of what's not a Freudian slip. What is it? Where I say something I mean. I keep bringing Martinez back in the rotation. Maybe deep down, I think Martinez is going to make it. Maybe that's somewhere deep in the back of my head.
I think he'll be in the 5.
I guess we'll see throughout spring training. I think you're right. I think it's depending on a lot of the pitching as we move forward. I think it's just going to take some time to kind of develop that and see what happens. But speaking of taking time, it is time. Kyler, I think I'm happy to talk about the rotation here, but that is what we wanted to talk about today on this episode of Reds Access and this week. And big thanks to everybody for tuning in. As you guys know, Kyler and I will be back next Tuesday with more breakdowns, hot takes on players, and everything you need to know about your Cincinnati Reds as we move from spring training here towards the regular season. Next week, we will round out the pitching group. Speaking about the bullpen, everybody knows pitchers are in front of position players in spring training. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and keep the conversation going with us on social media. We've seen some great growth lately there, guys, and we're excited to continue that growth through 2025. So rounding third and heading for home for Kyler Osterberger and myself at Reds Access, go Reds.
Go Reds.